And welcome to another exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. I'm your host, Michael. Now, as some of you may not be aware yet, that for the time being, it is going to be just me hosting the show, as Carla, my co host from the beginning, is wanting to take some time to focus on her paranormal team. So we wish her the best of luck and just letting you all know that the show will continue. Now, with that being said, tonight's episode is about Fort Wolters and an investigation that we did this January of 2023. Now, I have some guests that may be popping in if they can here and there to help out with explaining what investigation we did and why we did them. But in the meantime, I am going to share with you some experience that I got permission from Miss Eileen Potter of Potter Paranormal to share with you all. And that was, we were in the doll room kids area of the PX, and we were doing dowsing rod sessions, trying to connect with any spirits that were in the PX with us. And we actually got to connect with her recently parted 2 years ago husband, Ken Potter. And we had such an amazing experience. We were able to ask him questions, and Eileen was there to confirm whether or not he was answering. And so that was a very special part of the investigation, as many of us knew Ken Potter. And I, of course, had a deep emotional connection with him, and I had a moment where we all were asking questions, and I simply asked Ken, because he believed in me and saw potential with me joining his team, if I was living up to his expectations. And the answer I got back was yes, which really was a powerful experience for me, because it gave me comfort and validation of I'm on the right path with my paranormal research and paranormal investigating. And everyone that was there, we were asking questions like, are there aliens? And he would answer yes. So I'm not, going to say there's the answer on the alien question, but we all were kind of surprised that he actually answered the question. Now, we did spend quite a lot of time asking personal questions and questions about the other side with Ken. And so he answered a lot of the questions, but out of respect for Eileen and their relationship, that was between them. And so I'm going to leave that private. Now, with that being said, we then took and went into another part of the PX building. And this was a special treat, because this investigation was for Stephen Woodard and Catherine Gonzalez. Can't quite put my finger on her last name, but they were the winners of our Christmas special investigation, which is what this investigation was. So they were able to experience investigating Fort Wolters, and one of the big things that was going on is we all got together and tried in the poker room area of the PX building doing the human pendulum experiment. So this was my first time ever seeing it, and I participated in it, and I can tell you my experience is this is a very powerful and very unique investigation technique. It involves one person standing and has complete trust and faith in the people around him. And I had one person facing me, one person behind me, two people on each side, so that as they were asking questions, I would have my eyes closed, and the idea is the body answers the questions. And so, if you're familiar with the pendulum technique, it's the same deal, except you're using your body. Now, some people may call it kinesiology. That is also a very correct descriptive term. But in this process, we were asking questions and getting answers to questions like there was an Indian there were cavalry soldiers potentially there. And so it was a really interesting experience. And I can tell you, when I was asked one question in particular that I thought I knew the answer to, I was trying to answer yes, and my body wouldn't allow me, and I actually answered no. So it goes to show that the spirits will answer the way they want to answer, and you cannot sway on those. And so um, that was a really great technique that I am grateful that Stephen Woodard took the time to explain and show us. And I believe we did another one of those. I may be mistaken, but either way, it was a technique that I believe can be used by a lot of people, that you just have to be aware that you are opening space for sacred space. So make sure that you close it and close it properly. Now, welcome Tim Rice and Ron Parrish. Thank you for coming into the chat room. I will be answering questions about Fort Wolters as well. So if you have any questions about the abandoned military base in Mineral Wells, I'm happy to answer them. It is a very cool place to investigate. You get to investigate the PX building and the bank building. So you actually get two buildings for one investigation. Shauna Lee Anderson is the contact person. Now, one technique I'm sure everyone is familiar with is using dowsing rods connected to a spirit box. Well, while we were there, I was filming and we had the opportunity of having two people with dowsing rods and the ability to hook up both people to the spirit box. And so I dubbed the experiment dueling dowsing rods. And so we would ask questions and both of them would answer individually, or they may have answered at the same time. But it was great to see how both of them were getting sometimes the same answer, sometimes different. But it was great to see that you could use two people at the same time asking Estes style questions and still using the dowsing rods. Now, Ron Parrish is asking that he, would like to know about the location. So, Fort Wolters was built in Mineral Wells, and it was built during World War I. However, when I did research on the land and the area, I found out that prior to World War I, there were a lot of Indian wars and skirmishes around. And so it is very possible that there are Native American spirits at Fort Wolters. Now, Fort Wolters originally opened during World War I as Camp Wolters, which is where a lot of troops trained and went overseas. And then it was closed after World War I and reopened World War II as Camp Wolters. Actually, I stand corrected. I believe it was opened during World War II, not World War I. I may have my facts wrong on that one, and I apologize if I do. But it was in World War II where the two most decorated soldiers of World War II trained at Fort Wolters, Audie Murphy and Lieutenant Green, and the worst soldier of World War II, Eddie, also was trained there. Now, an interesting fact is Fort Wolters is also a German POW camp, so there are potential German soldiers who could come through and have on a few times when I've been investigating. So after World War II ended and the POW camp was closed, it was shut down, and then during the Vietnam age, it reopened as Fort Wolters, and the helicopter pilots for Vietnam trained there, and there were a lot of accidents in training with the helicopters and families living at the base. So the Beach Army Hospital is located in Fort Wolters area, and that was built there. And so there is a military hospital on the site, Ron. However, it is closed right now because it is needing some repairs and to bring it up to date and up to code for people. As for the brig, I know the barracks are still standing, but I do not know about the brig. And so when I've investigated at Fort Wolters, there are children that come through. There are soldiers that comes through. There are, like I mentioned, German soldiers can come through. We've had Indians come through. I've heard drumming in the bank building, like Native American drumming. So that was a fun and exciting surprise. I wasn't expecting that. And so Fort Wolters is partially abandoned now. The Army National Guard uses half of it, and the other half is privately owned. And so we are grateful that Shauna allows paranormal investigating at the PX and the bank buildings. And so when we were investigating there, there's also, if you are a fan of Destination Fear, the Chelsea doll from Destination Spheres episode when they were at the Nazareth Hospital, which is nearby, is now being shown at the Fort Wolters military base. So you can see the doll talk with her and try and find out, what's her real name, because we dubbed her Chelsea after Chelsea Layden. And so we're all trying to find out who she is and why she's a vessel doll, and get the history of her. We do know that she came from a family and they don't gave her to Shauna, and so Shauna is nice enough to allow that. I will say, as investigations go, up we have a guest, Stephen. Hello, Stephen.
How's it going? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome, awesome.
So I am kind of curious what you feel about your experience at Fort Wolters.
Oh, my experience at Fort Walters. Uh, it's a unique place. Very unique. You didn't put me on the big screen, but yeah, it's pretty unique. Yeah, being an old military base, the history that I know of the place of the lots of life lost due to helicopter accidents, crashes during training, and stuff like that. Plus the hospital not too far away, just down the hill, which that place within itself has energy. Well, you know what I'm talking about when it comes to beach, but yeah, I mean, just all the objects and all the stuff that were brought from different places and stuff that's to the Texas Fairgrounds. It brings an element of man, it's a lot of energy in one spot. I can put it that way.
Right. And you've actually investigated Fort Walters, is it 2 or 3 times?
Oh, about three times altogether.
So would you say it's always the same or is it different each time?
It's always different, and of course, I've gone to different places on the location. Uh, the last two times, of course, was at the Texas Fairgrounds, and even that was different. Like the first time was, oh, there's a lot of people there, so the energy felt different. This last time was a little bit more intimate, definitely a lot more intimate, especially with whom we had with us during that investigation, the different personalities and what had happened that night on that last investigation kind of blew my mind in a way of bringing back friends, bringing friends from beyond, if that makes sense.
Right. It does. And actually, I was talking a little bit about that earlier before you came on. And Eileen had said that we could discuss what our experiences were during that session. So if you want to elaborate, you can.
Okay, I didn't know how far that she wanted us to go with that because I mean, you know, I try to be respectful, especially when
Right.
it
I
comes to
told her
people.
we would be respectful.
Yeah, when it comes to people's loved ones that pass. So um, Eileen Potter, and I guess she's on the show. And for the audience that don't know, her husband Ken passed away at the Nazareth Hospital, and you probably already went through that. So we were. I'm trying to think. Did we start out with the dowsing rods, right?
Yes, it was the glow in the dark dowsing rods.
That's what it was. All right. So we started with the glow in the dark dowsing rods, and kind of went from there with a yes or no. And I know at one point because we were getting some pretty good hits, and then we were just getting off the wall stuff. And then I know for a fact I asked,
Oop. You
You got me?
moved out. I got you.
Okay. Out of the blue, I asked, was there the spirit that we were communicating with, was it from somewhere else? And of course, the rods crossed, and that meant yes, it came from somewhere else, and that's where we it's kind of where we found out who it was, and through different questions asking, and Eileen, you could see her get touched, you could see her get changed in a way that emotionally changed. But yet she it wasn't a grief. It was more like a celebration type deal. It was kind of it was odd for paranormal investigators to go find stuff that was more or less in a positive instead of just going out finding death. But I mean, but that's what we do this field for. We do this field to communicate. We do this field to find ways to communicate and validate that. That's what we do. Of
Right.
course, I mean, try to be respectful and not bring up loved ones. I'll try not to ever get involved with loved ones and stuff like that. But that was just a unique experience and the way that it ended up playing out. And then later that night, of course, we did a experiment that I was taught by some really good people, and the same thing happened. The same presence, the same energy showed up, and we had what was it, Mike? About three different responses from three different spirits on that one, but yet Ken showed up, and he pretty much stole the show, if you would say, to make good. I think he was just letting everybody know that he was still here and still around us.
Right. But yeah, and I mean, that was one thing that I thought was really unique, though, in a way, too, for as paranormal investigators, was to have a glimpse of what it was like on the other side and get some of those questions answered, where at the same time come up with more questions because you're like, wow, here we are
Yeah,
having.
I still walked away with more questions than I had answers. To be honest, I still had a lot more questions on like what just happened. I mean, was that really what just happened? Um, but it was fresh, it was unique, and it was, I don't know. I mean, it just felt like we were helping. We were helping a situation. It's like we were helping. We know we were. I'm not sure if we were helping the spirit out, but I would say he definitely helped us out. If that makes sense.
I think it does, and ironically, I would say that's probably what was needed that night with all the people that were there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Man, we had some good people there at night. It was a pretty good investigation. I had, I'd say, I wasn't going to say a blast, but I mean, I had a great time. Well, I guess it would have been a blast, but I guess I had a blast with the presence of whom was there, and how we interacted and reacted, and how we conducted that investigation. And I think it come off great. I wish we could have stayed longer, and
Well,
I wish we went to another building, but we'll leave it at that.
well, I think we didn't go to the other building because we were having so much going on in the one building we were at, and so we just were like, oh, and then everybody was like, okay, well, I think it's all quieted down, and we're like, well, let's just call it a night.
Right. And then all of a sudden, and yeah, I mean, how? Tell me, tell me what your take was, Mike, on that experiment we did. I mean, I'll get into it. I'll explain it. But what was your take? It was your first time doing it.
My take was, like I had mentioned before you came on when I was talking a little bit about it, was it was interesting to me that because I had my eyes closed, I had to trust the people that were around me were going to catch me if I started to fall. But beyond that, the one thing that stuck in my mind and stuck with me even to this day is you asked one question and I was feeling like I knew the answer to the question and went to answer it the way I was going to answer it. And the spirits were like, nope, it's a different answer, and wouldn't allow me to answer incorrectly. They were like,
Right.
no, this is our answer. This is what you're going to do. We're sorry, but no, we're not letting you change our answer.
Yeah, you have to let them talk to you. You don't talk to them. In other words, you don't answer for them. They'll answer the question exactly what you said.
Right.
It's,
And yeah, I mean, it's just like, I'm just mind blown because it's like, it was so, in my mind, easy to set up, easy to start and do, but yet I think it's one of the most powerful and most interesting techniques I've ever used.
well, let me say it this way. Let me put it in perspective for the audience. How much money did you have to buy for equipment for that? For that?
Well, in all honesty, the probably the only equipment we would have had was your phone at the time, the stand that the phone was on, and the Wi-Fi. So that would have
Yeah.
been it.
Besides that, what amount of money did you have to pay to do that experiment? Besides, and that's when I go. I'm a very big proponent of people starting out in the paranormal field. Do your three basics. Three basics is a camera, a recording device, and an environmental type device that to be able to get your environmental readings and stuff like that. But most importantly, a camera and a recording device. Now, I know a
Yeah,
camera can be a recording device, but you still need video as well. Um, that's the three basics that I preach upon. And if you're gonna go out and spend money and spend money and spend money on it, that's the only three things you need. And then with this experiment, you just needed
stuff
willing
you already
people,
had.
yeah, participants. That's willing participants. All you needed. I
Yeah.
was taught that experiment by Todd Leanescu, and they got it from. I don't want to speak for them. I don't want to speak for where they got it from, but they got it from somebody that taught them. In turn, they taught me, and I was also with Denise and Ernie Pack. So it was Leanne, Todd Eskew, Denise Pack, and Ernie Pack, and the first time I did it, I was you, Mike. I was in the middle trying to take all this in, like, yeah, show me, but I want to know what's going on. And and I did it in Salina, Kansas at the Haunted Masonic Temple, which, man, I don't even know how to describe that one, but it was some stuff being said and answered for sure. Um, and I was being controlled by not myself, but by what spirit came into that. Well, I say spirits because there was quite a few there that was present, and you could feel them come into you. And you just have to relax and trust. That's the biggest thing is trust. And but once few people do it a few times, everybody starts, especially if you start doing it in groups, you guys start to trust each other. Um, when I went into it, I trusted. Well, I trusted Denise Pack. I don't know about Ernie so much because you know how devious that guy is. He was probably going to drop me on the floor anyway. But and I did trust Todd and Leanne Eskew. And then, of course, we had 30 other people sitting around watching this experiment. But that's who I was taught by, some really good paranormal professionals.
Yeah, and I'm glad you taught me it because I was like, man, I was thinking by the name Human Pendulum, I'm expecting this huge like experiment with a lot of stuff here and there, and I was like, "Oh, this is it? Cool. This is
You were
something
thinking,
you can do anywhere."
you thought I was going to chain you up to the ceiling and swing you around.
Well,
That was
maybe
my
not
first.
that extreme, but
That was my
uh,
first thought when they asked me if I wanted to do it. You want to be a human pendulum? I'm like, oh my god, what are y'all gonna do? Hang me up and make me a pendulum, swing me around, or what are y'all gonna do? But that I'm saying that because you have to know the people that were involved in that, like Ernie Pack for sure. That did come to mind. But no, it's real simple. I'd say 6 people. You want 4 people in the circle, one person in the middle. That's 5, and then you want someone outside the circle completely conducting the experiment, and that's all you need. That's it.
right. And the beauty of that too, that I think of having the person in the middle, and in this case, me in the middle and you on the outside, is I don't know what you're gonna ask, so I really can't like start responding yes or no anyhow, because it's like I can kind of guess what your question's going to be, but I can't read your mind, so it's like really until the question's asked, you can't really answer anyway, because it's like you have no idea.
And I've thought about. I've never done it this way, but I've thought about conducting an experience the experiment the same way that I do like the Estes method. I thought about blindfolding and putting earplug or noise canceling headphones on as well, which we did that experiment there as well. We did a double Estes method actually, and that was a pretty good experiment that we had at Fort Wolters
Right.
also. That
Yeah, we
was
did that with Chelsea and with two sets of dowsing rods too.
2 sets of dowsing rods, 2 different people giving 2 different answers. That was a double Estes method. But like I said, one is that I haven't done it myself, but it, I'm thinking that we could, blindfold somebody, put noise canceling headphones on and all that, and that way the person in the middle does not hear, anything that's being asked, and your body just, you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, just go with whatever direction the spirit makes you go.
Right.
And
That,
man,
yeah,
yeah,
because
that's turning wheels. I'm gonna try that next time.
I know I'm sitting here thinking now, going, that would be really cool to do like two sets. Like you could have one where you have someone, just standing there with their eyes closed answering, and then you can do
Yeah,
it again with the blindfold and headphones on and see if the
but
answers are the
see,
same or different.
and that's this field. We got to elevate the experiments we do. We got to elevate it. We can't just leave it. We got to elevate it, take it that step further. And what even made me even think of doing it that way is by what you just said. You just said you couldn't anticipate my answers, or if I was going to ask the questions or whatever. What if I take that completely out? That was my thought process in that. So that right there's another way we can conduct that experiment. That cost, I don't know, $2 for the blindfold. I don't know, $40 for the noise canceling mics. That's all the equipment you need, right?
Yeah, well, you need this. Yeah, actually, you wouldn't need the splitter in that case, because
All
I
right.
was thinking if you're doing the double, but yeah, just a single. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, Ron's actually asked a interesting question that I think might be more up your alley to answer. Is when we were talking about the Chelsea doll, he's saying yes, dolls are vessels or vehicles. The connection can change as different spirit or entities use it. Would you say the doll was brought there to attract specific individuals who like the investigate those type of things? I ask because it doesn't seem to fit the location.
Okay, so that doll has quite a bit of history. It came. I don't know exactly the origin of that doll, exactly where it came from. I know Shauna said a few things about it. They got it from somewhere. But anyway, it was at the old Nazareth Hospital first. And that's where on Destination Fear, Chelsea, and they call it the Chelsea doll because she had her reaction in that episode. I don't make me tell you the episode that it was in Destination Fear, but that doll was sitting in the corner, up in the corner of the room, and it was a big black mask coming out of that doll, and they caught that on camera, and I think Chelsea saw it with her own eyes without the camera, and it
She did.
really flipped her out. Yeah, she had to leave the room.
Yeah.
So my first, I never even knew that doll even existed because I'll be honest with you, I don't really watch Destination Fear. I really don't watch a lot of paranormal anything. I really don't. Just I I just go out and do my thing. I don't particularly watch a lot of shows or who's on what show and who's doing what. I don't particularly watch it. So I didn't really know a lot about the doll until Shauna said, "Yeah, it was on Destination Fear and all that." And she was telling me the story about what happened to Chelsea. So I did what any good researcher does. I went back to YouTube and I watched the episode over and over and over again. And then that's when we come for that event where my wife and I were guest speakers at the event there at Fort Wolters. And that was the first encounter I ever had with that doll. It's a vessel. It's a vessel. It's like I said, we that night that Michael and I were talking about that last investigation we did there, we sat down with 2,000 rods, sat down and did a double Estes method with two wonderful women. Lots of different people asking questions. It wasn't just one person. I think Michael, you even asked a question or two, or we all got involved in that, and
Right.
we were getting a lot of man. A doll. We were getting a lot of intelligent results. If that makes sense. Like almost pinpoint locations of where that doll actually came from.
Right.
Um,
And she was talking about her wanting her other to be found, and
yeah,
that's hard
yeah,
to do because it's like you can't just Google, "Hey, old doll that's missing friend."
yeah. So apparently this doll had a companion doll with it, and we don't know. We didn't really get that far if that doll had some type of possession or was a vessel also. But she was the night that we were doing the experiment. She was real adamant, letting us know that she had a sister doll that she wanted to get back with. Um, man, did she throw out names, Michael, and some other things?
I think she was starting to throw out names and areas, but
Okay,
I think it was like I I want to say the sister dolls in Texas, but I'm not sure
I
because
think
I don't remember.
I think what the answer we got when we asked that, I think it was around Fort Worth.
That's what
It
I
was
was
Fort,
thinking.
yeah,
She said, but it's like
Fort,
even still, that's quite a large area to search.
Fort Worth or Weatherford. I can't remember if it was one of the two locations. It's Fort Worth, Weatherford area. Is I'm pretty sure that's what she was. I think Weatherford maybe. Yeah, and that's. I would have to go back and listen to all the audio and stuff from that to know what was actually said during that event. I know there's video of it.
Right, and she was, and talking about intelligent responses, she was saying like, I don't like my hair color. I don't wish I had my original hair color. And it's like, how many
Yeah,
dolls would say my hair color's wrong?
and she didn't like the dress she was in.
Right.
She kept. She didn't like the dress, and she wanted her original clothes back. She wanted the stuff off her face and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was. I still want to go and go deep further in with that doll. That doll's a trip. So if anybody, the audience out there, yeah, go to Mineral Wells, go to Texas Scaregrounds, That doll is there at that location. She didn't Shauna have her in a glass box there for a little while, or did she keep her put up and then just brings her out during the investigation?
She, during the haunted house in October, she's locked up in the museum in the
That's right.
bank building. But otherwise, she tends to leave her where she feels the doll wants to be in the PX building. And you can just
Right.
walk up and just talk to her or sit with her. But
Yeah.
I will say, though, too, that I would say, yes, she is a vessel doll because there was one night on a previous investigation where Kellen and I were there talking to her while she was up on a wall,
Hmm.
and I started asking questions of her and filming her, and I was like, "You don't want me here, do you?" And all of a sudden, my arm that was holding up the camera started to feel like somebody was squishing the bone. It was like started really
Wow.
hurting, and I was like, "You want me to leave, don't you?" And she was like, "Yep." And the
And then
second
you knew.
I walked out of the room, it was like my arm was totally fine.
Yeah. Now, don't quote me on this because, like I said, I get a lot of secondhand information from Shauna and other people and yourself that go to that place quite frequently. But I want to say I was told, and just correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't want to quote and say, but the doll has ended up in places that she was not left at. Is that true?
Um, like, what do you mean? Like,
I think I remember Shauna saying something. She put her in a certain spot, and the doll ended up being somewhere else.
I don't know if she necessarily moved herself, but I know there were times when I would come in and I'd say to Shauna, "Hey, where'd Chelsea go?" And she goes, "Oh, she wanted to be moved to another location.
Okay.
Someone said this, and so we put her over here now." And it's like, "Oh, okay."
Okay. Yeah, I didn't want to make it sound like it's something more than what it was, but I do remember because you mentioned the fact that I know Shauna does move her around a lot. That she ended up being in a place that no one knew where she was at.
Right.
I just
Yeah. And
stories.
I mean, and even with all of this aside, I mean, talking about investigations there, like Shauna's been scratched. People, I've heard screams there, like people walking around on the ceiling when there's nowhere to walk. There is
Sure.
no second level, and all kinds of sounds and EVPs. I mean, I don't know that I've had an apparition there yet, but I know one team member caught a shadow in the
Right.
lobby area. And so, I mean, I would say if you get the chance and you're in Texas by Mineral Wells, you definitely, this is one place you probably, I could say you don't want to miss because you're guaranteed something. I know as paranormal investigators, we can't guarantee something all the time, but I have yet to go to Fort Wolters and not get something.
Well, that's the thing. It's not even just in the scare grounds area. It's anywhere on that base. I mean, there is one night we were there. I think a night early, and my wife and I, we were kind of messing around back where the motor pools used to be at the far back, and there were some old abandoned buildings right there, and we were kind of messing around with that, and kind of heard some suspect things and stuff like that. Of course, we didn't have it on like a digital recorder or anything, but we were just nosing around anyway, and yeah, just and then there's other places that are on that facility that I can't mention. You know what I mean?
Right.
And yes, we've had some experiences there. I would just say leave it at that. And I'm talking about some bone chilling experiences at some of these other locations on that base.
Yeah, and I was mentioning Beach Army earlier being the military hospital and was built because of the families and the accidents that were happening during the helicopter training. But yeah, it is unfortunately closed, and so
Yeah,
do,
that's what I
do
was.
not go in there.
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning without trying to say the name of it or give it away. That that we went into beach and all that. But
But I will say, as you were mentioning, she has objects from other places that a lot of the stuff from Beach Army is in the PX building or the
yeah,
bank building. So I kind of feel like the spirits that were there have kind of shifted over to Fort Walters. So it's kind of like, it's still
attachment.
investigating beach, but not in the building.
Oh, that building is something else, though. I tell you that. They ever
It
get it
is.
to where you could go in there and where it's not closed, if they could ever get it that way, man, that place is amazing. That's all I got to say.
I
Uh,
know. I was shocked by it.
yeah, and it's big. It's freaking huge.
Yeah,
It's
I
freak.
was surprised to the night I was there. I was there with Mustafa and Kristen from Ghost Hunters and walking through and feeling like, wow, there's all kinds of energies there from spirits that just were there for the land, some that were not happy, some that I'm not sure what they were. It was just like a huge mix. And to find out that was the last night, too, that the building was open for investigation, I was like, man, that left a solemn mark on it, too.
It did, didn't it? I mean, there may or may not be a video floating around with me and George shopping in that building. But George Joplin went in that building and he was like, "Oh my God," he, he was awestruck. Uh,
Yeah.
and we had some pretty good communications between my wife, George, and Kara. Uh, we got to at least we got to go and see the building and experience a little bit of it. Not much of it, but a little bit of it. So it was
Yeah.
worth it.
It's one of those that it's like looking at it, you just know it's haunted.
Yeah.
It just
Oh
has
yeah.
that look.
I know when we were walking around it in the daytime, we could hear stuff on the inside, and Shauna, I think she was telling us that the homeless people or whatever go in that building where, and that's what we were thinking we were hearing. But no, that building was empty. And I know there's in that video, there's can't really hear it, but there's a loud voice when we're in a certain area, and I go, "Oh my God, did y'all hear that?" And Sean's husband had to go back in the back seat because it looked like a person was walking back there, but it was nobody back there. Matter of fact, it was in an area where it's like covered with water and you can't get in or out.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it was man. But not to undersell the PX building or the bank building. Those buildings are pretty haunted themselves,
Yeah.
and just
I was
like I
sharing.
said,
Yeah. I was just going to say the bank building surprised me because I was getting in the vault area Indian drums, like they were
yeah,
drumming ceremony. You would never expect that. And there are a couple of spirits roaming around the PX building that just, I think, are just grumpy.
yeah,
And one we actually even call the grumpy old man. And he just makes himself known in a certain area. And he, I will say though, I don't ever feel like walking in there that I have to be on edge because the spirit's gonna do something to me.
right,
It's always like they're friendly, but they may not be friendly. But they're not. gonna hurt you. They're not gonna like draw blood or something, to try and take you over. They're just, I think, just are who they are, and that's all there is to it.
Right. Yeah. It was. Man. Oh, so I did some research when I come home from the first time we were there. The native tribes that were native to that area was Comanche and the Shawnee were the two warring tribes in that area. And there was another Indian tribe. I don't remember the name of it. Not as
Caddo,
big.
Caddo and Apaches were around.
Yeah, that they were more Apaches were more. That's not where I'm living at. That's their whole area. But Comanches pretty much had that. That was their land, around where Mineral Wells is,
Right.
all the way down through Parker County. So that was all Comanche. But those spirits, those spirits are pretty. Man, they can get pretty ornery at times. I can put it that way. That's why, especially anybody who if I see live investigations, because I do, I browse around, watch live investigations, time here and there. And if they're like on native land, I'll always ask, if anybody can speak the native tongue. If anybody can, because if you're doing EVP sessions and stuff like that, and especially if you're in, on an Indian reservation or something like that, or an area that was once an Indian reservation, or like out here where I live, where the whole area was Apache Indians. Um, if you speak some Apache, you can get more EVPs back. But also out here where I live, like I said, it's all Apache land, but there is right around where Carlsbad Caverns is, and right where Skinwalker Cave is, in between that section, they back back in the 60s and 70s, they excavated. They went through the area. They did some um, geologists and stuff like that, and they found several roundhouses that dated back to like 100, 200 BC. And we're talking about Neolithic times. This is before, um, I guess this will be before the tribes actually had like right names like Apaches, Comanches, and all that.
Yep.
And they were more or less like Navajo or Incans and stuff like that. That was kind of what was in this area at that time. But this is a long time ago. But it's a whole trail complex not too far from where I live. I mean, I can walk there, and they have roundhouses that they found from way back when, and just walking on that land. And even here at my house, I mean, it feels kind of funny outside every once in a while. Yeah,
So,
you just
yeah, I got an interesting question then for you, talking, about the past. Like you're mentioning, BC time. Would you consider that you follow the land bridge theory of they came from Asia, crossed the land bridge, came down and settled into the Americas and everything, or are you one of those that says, no, I don't think the land bridge was really there. I think the tribes just were here and we just
I see.
didn't know it.
No, I see where you're going with the land bridge thing, but then that so instead of getting an ancient alien theorist, because I'm an ancient alien theorist, because that's who I am. That's where I mean I do. I'm down with the ancient alien, um, and their technology and so on. But remember, at one time this Earth was formed differently, so the continents were actually pushed closer together. I wouldn't
Right. The
necessarily call it a land bridge. They were actually together. The tectonic plates kind of pushed it all around, made the water and stuff the way it is now. And that took millions and millions of years for that. So even with that, that's where with all the continents and everything pushed together, I mean, that's where all your life's going to be on those continents. And when they split up, I mean, yeah, whatever was in that particular area is going to be there, and that's where you have certain species to certain areas and so on. There's also the Great Mud Flood theory. You good on that one, Michael? The Great Mud Flood.
So, what was the mud flood?
Well, mud flood was something. I want to say it was around the times of the Great Flood and stuff like that. But and the reason that happened was because there was technology here, and it was technology here that needed to be covered up. So that the Great Mud Flood covered up. Well, I mean, the whole Earth, with the Great Flood and all that, and it covered up a lot of civilization, like what would have been Atlantis, stuff like that, covered them completely up. And there was other civilizations also. That's why when they go to the Grand Canyon, there's supposed to be certain places there you can go in caves and see like ancient technology. Also, where like in right outside of Glen Rose, or I know it's at Glen Rose, but they found it south of Glen Rose. I can't remember the name of the town they found it in, but it was the hammer they found in the middle of a rock.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, it's at the Creation Museum in Glen Rose. It's a full fledged rock that they beat into. When they did, it's an iron hammer with a wooden handle inside that rock, and it was shaped in a certain way. It was shaped like hexagon. It wasn't even, and it was built like a hammer. And it's in Glen Rose at the museum.
Oh, I'll have to go
Uh,
check that out.
Yep. And then also there at Glen Rose at the Creation is where they got dinosaur footprints right next to human, but not and we're not talking about Neanderthal humans because their footprints were a little different. It was actually human footprints next to the dinosaur footprints.
Right, and I had a guest on who worked for the National Park Services at Glen Rose, and they're saying that it's been misnomered that they're human prints, that they're actually a dino stepped on another dino's print. And I was like, maybe, but to my mind, it still looks like a human footprint. So I'm going to say, since we don't know for sure 100%, I could say it could be two dinos, and it could be a human and a dino. Who knows?
After living in Glen Rose and seeing it with my own eyes, that's a human print. That's no dinosaur stepping on another dinosaur. That
I
is
know.
a foot. My foot is in the freaking water. There's no covering it up.
Yeah, I've seen it too, and it's like I have a hard time with the two dinos, but
Yeah,
like I said, that's their opinion, and I respect that. And it may be, who knows? If
I don't know. I
we
wasn't there,
weren't
so
there when it was created, so
I wasn't
I
there, so I
just
don't know.
think it's amazing to see, and it just challenges the mind to look further and go, what is this? And that's what I
Yeah,
think its real mission is.
but the one thing, what I was talking about at the museum there in Glen Rose also is that hammer. That's undeniable. That's an iron freaking hammer in the middle of a freaking rock that was dug. I want to say they dug 30 feet down and got to that rock because they were in a quarry. So that's how far, and that goes along with covering up the technology and stuff with the Great Mud Flood theory.
Right.
That goes right along with that. There's other stuff. Um, what do they call it? Unplaced artifacts. They got a whole name for it. It's a whole thing on the internet now. If you just go to unplaced or whatever artifact, it's got something part. U part. I forgot the name of it, but yeah, it's artifacts that shouldn't be, like the ancient clocks and the ancient computers and stuff like that.
Yeah,
You look at
I
that.
just saw an episode recently about they think it's a clock that they found near Greece.
Yeah, but there's one in Malta too. They found a lot of stuff in Malta. Um, Crazy stuff, like ancient robots.
Yeah, and I gotta say, one of the things I love about talking with you is like when people talk to me about, the tribes and everything, I'm like, yeah, my mind automatically goes to the land bridge because I'm like, that's what makes the most sense. And I forgot about Pangea and going, well, yeah, they could have been there, and just when they
Yep.
split apart, they just were like, okay, see you guys later. We're on this place.
Yep. There's no land bridge anymore. We're separated, but and that's same along the lines with Easter Island too, with how that stuff got formed and
Yeah. Did
those
you know that
diggers,
they found
which is part.
bodies? Yeah. Did you know they found bodies attached to those heads?
Yes, they're like 30 feet down. It's like
Yeah.
a whole freaking like a totem pole. Yeah, they
Yeah.
dug out there. I mean, it's not. That's why I was just gonna say before you said that. It's amazing how the only thing you see is a face, but there's stuff underneath that. If you dig that dirt up, like a whole 30 foot uh, statue.
And the amazing thing too, though, is you know take it for what it is. It is television, but Josh Gates was investigating it and found there is like two islands that have identical type statues, and
Hmm.
they're all facing each other.
Yep.
So it's like that is not natural. I would say there you won't have those type of statues just randomly facing each other.
And the
Somebody
distance
do that.
apart by water. The distance they are apart by water, just and that's that tells you right there. There was a big disruption in land. The land split apart in certain ways.
Yeah.
So that
So
I mean,
we Yeah, I mean, that's the thing I love about the paranormal field is people always think that because we're paranormal investigators, we investigate ghosts and spirits and that's it. And it's like, no, there's UFOs, there's dimensional stuff, there's cryptids, there's, all kinds of theories. And it's like a lot of people will say, well, this is this. And I go, well, but you realize that has this kind of theme to it, which makes it paranormal. And they look at me, they're like, actually, you're right. So it's
what
like,
what what does paranormal mean? And it's abnormal, not normal.
right.
Paranormal, not normal, not the normal, not the standard. That's all that I mean, myself personally is I do it all. I don't. I mean, even back when I first started years and years ago, it was mainly ghosts and spirits and stuff like that. But I evolved and I grew, and it went into UFOs. It went ufology, a little bit of cryptoids, a little bit of Bigfoot and stuff like that, and
Hanging out with the
where
dinosaurs.
yeah, that too, and then um, when I started actually getting more into the metaphysical is when I started opening my eyes to everything. Because the metaphysical and that within the paranormal, that's just everything combined. I mean, it's all what you uh, conceive and believe up there. It it opens your eyes to things you never thought. Like, yeah, I mean, could we be an alien race that just got stuck here, or are we an alien race that got planted here? Um, there's a lot of questions, just don't
Yeah.
have no answers.
I have one that might surprise you. Is I
Yep.
started recently thinking about, when we go and investigate and say we're watching some we call residuals, where someone is walking down a hallway doing what
Stone
they
tape.
always. What if we're seeing another dimension, like a parallel world, where they're doing their daily life we're seeing a glimpse of it. We're thinking we're looking at a ghost, but it's a real person doing what they're doing, just not on our Earth, and that's why it disappears and you can never find traces of them. Is we're glimpse. It's like the veil between the dimensions got so thin that we could see both sides, and it's like that to me starts tripping, going, man, am I seeing another dimension
Well, I mean,
parallel?
that that's two things that you touched on as far as residual. So residual is basically um, stone tape theory. It's something that an energy that was pressed in the time and it replays over and over again. Now, usually on a residual, something like on a stone tape theory, is you can go by your clock on that particular thing. It's going to be there at this certain time every night or whatever. It's going to replay just like an old film. It just and at the temple, there's every night, same time, you see the same thing go by the camera every night. That's just it's just something that's burnt in time, just like a tape recorder. Now, residual, there's another one like what you're saying. It could be in an interdimensional tear. It could be a ripple in the dimensions, and yes, you're seeing someone else's dimension for a split second. But the thing about that is, if you're looking at someone else's dimension, they're also probably looking at yours, and
Right,
you're
and that's
both out
why,
going, "What the hell?"
yeah, and that's why I would say to some people, it's like, we get the shocked look on our face, and they have a shocked look on their face. It's like we're probably two different dimensions, realizing we're looking at each other.
And that's what I said. You have to believe in all of it. It's not just
Yeah,
you don't believe in one. You have to believe in all of it. So you have to believe in all of it and put it all. Well, you don't have to believe in it, but you have to have knowledge of all of it and be able to put tests to theories and stuff to get answers. Um,
yeah,
like the
and
stone tape. That's something that we have, proof of that over and over and over and over again. We've caught these particular things at certain times, certain shapes, same thing, same everything, and it just happens over and over. I can go there tonight at if I'm there at the time it's supposed to happen and see it or on a camera. Then you got, like I said, the dimensions. You have to believe in all of it to put your test, but then again, you have to be rational in your thinking to know what you're dealing with. Step back. What am I dealing with? Am I dealing
right,
with this? Am I dealing with that? And then you have to put the test to figure out which one it is.
yeah, and the way I like to phrase it is, you have to be open to all possibilities. You can't narrow your focus down, because then it's like, no, you're gonna miss something that's a key
Right.
piece because it doesn't fit your narrative.
Well, I'm not saying you can't be a skeptic. I'm just saying you have to have some invested interest in all the fields to be able to tie it all together.
Right.
Because I mean,
I'm not meaning skeptic either. I was just meaning, like, if you're going like you were saying, the first residual is, it's something that repeats, and
yeah,
if you're like only believe that definition of residual, then yeah, you're gonna miss
the other
the,
part.
looks like a portal that they walked through, and it's like the tear, and it's like, yeah, we're just happens to be the time they do that, and they may not do it tomorrow. Doesn't mean it's not residual. It's just a different form, and so that's why I
Yeah,
say open to all the possibilities of, we never know. It's like, that's what paranormal actually to me is we're, investigating the unknown, and so until it's known, we're still always going to be considered paranormal.
yeah, you're good there, York Walters. Glad you're listening to us. And I'm actually being able to see the daggum comments now. Amazing that. Yeah.
Well, Stephen, I appreciate you coming on, and I know it. And I know you're in an area where your Wi-Fi keeps coming in and out, and we've actually gone a little over our hour. So I just want to thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. I appreciate you sharing your experience and your knowledge with us.
Hey, you're lucky. You got me out of retirement because I'm not supposed to have anything to do with the paranormal right now.
Well, I won't tell anyone if you won't. But no, I appreciate it. I appreciate you teaching me that technique, and I will try and find times and places where I can use it and see if it brings information, clarity. So thank you for that, and thank you for everyone that was watching tonight. And we will be back with another episode next week when we are going to be talking about Myrtle's plantation and our investigation we did in March there. So
Wow.
that was a fun one. So we'll see about who's going to be on for that one. And so we are going to call it a night. Thank you to everyone. Thank you again, Stephen. And I will send us out with our outro.
All right.
You
Hi,
have just
everybody.
listened to The Energy That Surrounds Us with your hosts, Michael Koff and Carla Norris. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.